Ohio. We're high on Ohio. These stories inform and inspire through the words of people who make Ohio home. Good news and good ideas, identifying and acknowledging the excellence that is all around us. We've been talking a lot about poverty and everything. A few years back, David Rusk, who is the son of Dean Rusk, came up with an interesting book called Inside Game, Outside Game. And according to the analysis he'd done of studies of Maryland, the best way to, if you will, break the poverty cycle, and I'm also referring here maybe a little bit to the works done by Ruby Payne too on some of the stuff, is dispersed affordable housing. That he says that when you get poverty concentrated in one tight geographic area, he said literally statistically, for example, almost every teenage girl will become pregnant. And when that happens, it's very hard to break out of the poverty cycle. Will that work in rural Ohio, or is that only something that we could see in, but this kind of goes to the issue of some other civic capacity issues that we're facing also all around the state.
Well, ironically, the issue of subsidized housing is just welfare in another form.
Okay.
I mean, it is money changing hands. It is a subsidy. It just happens to be targeted to a particular need that people have, which is housing. I think the idea of breaking up pockets of poverty is fine. I mean, I think, if the goal is to provide people with a decent place to live, I think that's fine. The trouble is that what you're not controlling are the other people around them, because this is already happening to a certain sense as people are fleeing the inner cities, poor people, and moving into the suburbs. Well, the people in the suburbs with money are moving farther out. I mean, to have these kind of heterogeneous communities that you'd like to have presumes that you control everybody. Well, you don't. I mean, the people out there who have money will pack up and leave and go somewhere else when the poor people come in. That's, essentially the reality of our culture.
Jack, here's sort of a broad brush question for you.
Sure.
From a public policy perspective, what keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night, and this literally keeps me up at night. I'm not just in real life, keeps me up at night. I worry about where we're headed with our attitude about helping poor people, our unwillingness to help them, to share with them. I've seen this get worse and worse over the years. I watched 20 years ago when we eliminated the general assistance program. At the time that all happened, I remember everybody saying, wow, this is awful and terrible. But this would never happen to cash assistance. This would never happen to families with children. Well, I watch now in Ohio as we've thrown 100,000 people off cash assistance. There are more kids, like I said, now who without cash assistance living in poverty than there are kids with it. And I watch this evolve over the years. And I know real families, real people. My agency is involved. I mean, we administer this. We throw people off welfare every day. I mean, we have to administer the rules that are out there, and the rules that are out there now are doing that. We have 3-year time limits, sanctions for people who don't do work requirements, all those kind of things. Well, every day I know that's, we do this as humanely as we possibly can. But at the end of the day, I know that, we're adding to the group of people out there who have no money at all, maybe food stamps, if they're lucky, and they're still here. They didn't disappear. They're still in the community. I worry about that every day. I worry about, how those people are going to eat. I worry about the growing number of them, and what happens when you turn around and you realize that the very institution that was set up to help them, the welfare department, the job and family services, the human service office, we keep changing our name, no longer has the mission of protecting these families or providing them with basic needs. That is no longer the mission of our agency.
You brought up one thing which we've not discussed a little bit, which is the job of Job and Family Services. There's the job portion.
Right.
How is that going, in your opinion, as far as helping people who have, shall we say, missed a rung of the ladder?
Sure.
Helping them get back up on the ladder to go back up. How's that working out in your opinion, the job aspect of it?
I think that we've done a much better job of this in the past when we were able to provide more funding for training.
Okay.
You know, we've had huge cuts in the WIA program, huge cuts in the TANF program. When we were able to provide more funding for addressing one of the most basic barriers these folks have, which is transportation. I mean, you know, it takes $4,000 or $5,000 a year to own a car and keep it on the road. You know, we're talking about people who don't have that much in income, period. You know, and yet we expect them to show up for work every day. I mean, one of the things I like to ask people to do is look at, you know, down here, most of the jobs, new jobs now are service industry jobs. Probably half of them aren't even full-time. But even if you look at someone who's working full-time minimum wage, and they expect them to show up every day all the time, well, in order for them to keep a functioning car on the road, it would take at least a third or more of their income.
Right.
So you have these low-wage employers out there who have constantly complaining to me about the turnover they have on their staff. You know, we can't keep people, we can't keep them working. And I ask them, well, how much do you pay them? You know, and they'll say minimum wage. We start them out at 20 hours. You know, and they say we got to see if they're going to work, blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, how did you expect they were going to get to work?